If your life seems very complex, you got a lot of stuff going on, you're busy, you're stressed out, but you need to declutter. Today's episode, we're going to talk about 4 ways to declutter your life so you're just overall happier. Welcome back to the Chasing a Greater Vision podcast. I'm your host, Rickey Jasper. Thank you all so much for listening. If you all like this podcast, please share it with friends. We're trying to get this out there as much as possible, but I really appreciate the engagement, the interaction with you all as well. It makes me better, and I hope that it makes you better as well. Today's video is really cool. It's talking about decluttering our life. So there's 4 ways that I've identified, and I'll talk about them more in depth, but at a high level, they are number 1, identifying your responsibilities. Number 2, identifying your priorities. Number 3, figuring out what energizes you. And number 4, assessing your mental, emotional, relational, and spiritual needs. I sense this from a societal standpoint, and it might be because we have so much in life and we have so many opportunities. It feels like the mass majority is like, well, I just go to a job it's fine. I'm in a relationship that it's fine. Well, I might be in my 30s, 40s, and my fitness is like, well, it's kind of hell in a handbasket and whatever. It's fine. And everything is just kind of this dull fineness. And I think, and I'm like, well, why are we going through life with that on a consistent basis? And I'm not saying that every day is supposed to be happy. No, I don't think that every day is supposed to be happy. I think you should have some very tough, stressful, very trying and demanding days, because those are the building block days. But I do think that it should be a predisposition to waking up in the morning and being excited about what's to come, even if a day is going to be tough, and realizing that, oh man, maybe if I declutter my life and I declutter my day a little bit, that I have some time for me and I can do the things that I need to do, I can overall be happier. And that's what I want to talk about today. Number 1 in our tips and tricks segment, this segment are things that I actively do, and that I hope that help you, and really just simple things that you can implement today and really see improvement on things today. So number 1, it's identifying your responsibilities. My definition of responsibilities are things that you have to do no matter what, no matter how you feel. There are things that you cannot not do, right? I don't say fitness is a responsibility of mine, because if I don't do it, life goes on. But making sure, that my fiance has her needs met, making sure that my tasks in the house to keep the house up and running, those things are my responsibilities, because in order to keep a quality of life and in order to keep a happiness of life, those things have to be done. So when you identify what your responsibilities are and you really write them down, you're able to almost put the monster on paper. I think that sometimes, we run away from responsibilities because they're hard. They're things that we have to do so consistently, even if we don't want to do them. So we can push them off. Then we end up, every day feels like the quote unquote Sunday scaries, because we just don't want to do those things. But over time, if you are putting your responsibilities in front of your face, even if you don't like doing them. I don't love taking the trash out, but it's a responsibility of mine. I do that consistently. It becomes easier. It makes everybody in the house happy. And it's one thing that I'm like, well, because everybody else in the house is happier, I'm a happier person, because overall the elevated mood is there. It's a responsibility. So if you jot down what your responsibilities are, and I don't have kids yet. I'm pretty sure anybody with kids listening is like, this is what we do all the time. And we are just running through life with our responsibilities. And even though sometimes they suck, it somewhat keeps the house together. So, I'm speaking more so to people that probably don't have kids, who might be like, well, I can put off responsibilities because I'm only, focused on myself. But if you get in the habit of doing the things that you have to do, that you don't want to do all the time, what it's going to do, it's going to uncomplicate your life, because those are going to be so habitual and so organized that you're going to have more time for yourself, and you're going to have less time stressing about the responsibilities that you have to do. I also think about this from a job standpoint. I have my daily task list, and I view my tasks at work as responsibilities. If I do not do these things, then I should not have a job, right? Because these are things that I have to get done, that I'm getting paid for, that's expected of me. So I see those as my responsibilities. No matter how I feel, I got to knock them out. If you look at life like that, in those hard things, everything else is going to be easier. Number 2, identify your priorities. Now, responsibilities and priorities, I see them as differently. Priorities are things that they should get done, not they must get done. Fitness is a priority of mine. It is a one of my top priorities, right? Which means that if there's time throughout the day, I am allotting a certain amount of time to that, but does not supersede a responsibility. I have to get all my responsibilities done or make sure that there's time allotted to do all of my responsibilities. And then if there's time left in the day, or if there's time allotted for fitness or other priorities, then I'll do said priorities. Right. And if you think of, I'll use the job situation. If you have a job and you're going to a job 9 to 5, that's your responsibility because you have to get that done. And if you have other things that, supersede that, you can't just not do those things because they're a priority over your job, because at some point in time, that responsibility is going to be taken away from you and you're going to be out of a job. So identify what your priorities are and what your wants are. And not all priorities are going to get done all the time, right? Like I really love, if you all follow me on Instagram, like I love making meats on the smoker, right? Like I love that. I do it about 3 times a week. I love it. But some weeks I only do it once a week. Some weeks I don't get around to doing it because it's a priority of mine, but it's not a top priority of mine. So if it falls by the wayside because I have other responsibilities or higher priorities take a little bit more time, then this is getting pushed out. And that's okay, because when you establish priorities, then you establish an allowance of grace for yourself if you don't hit every single thing on your priority list, right? Responsibilities, you're sitting back saying, I got to do it. Priorities, like, man, I really want to do it, but you're giving yourself some grace if you don't get to certain priorities. And the way that uncomplicates your life and that makes you feel happier is because you see this laundry list of your day and you're giving yourself grace for things that if they don't get done, that's okay. I'm victim of this because I'm someone who I want to get all my responsibilities done. I want to get all my priorities done. And if I don't do that, I'm like, I'm not an optimized human being. I feel like I failed the day. And it took me some time to realize that's not the case. And it took me some time to realize that that's not a healthy way to go through every single day. So identify your priorities, the things that you want to do. Make sure that your top priorities are there, that you can get to them, and that everything else is, pushed down a little bit. And that's okay. Number 3, figure out what energizes you. Now, I segment this in 2 ways, in people and then activities. From a people standpoint, some people just don't energize you. Some people will pull you down with their negativity, with their pessimism, with the way that they speak, with the way that they go about life. You have to be very cautious of that. You have to be very cautious of, who those people are in your life or around your life, and make sure that you are, staying away from them as much as possible. Now, sometimes you can't not stay away from them. Sometimes it's people you work with. Sometimes it's managers. Sometimes it's just people where you're consistently in some type of company with them. But what you can do is limit interaction or be very structured about your interactions with them, or time box your interactions with them. And then there are some people who they energize you. They make you feel so much better about yourself. Those are people that you want to be around because they pull something out of you that you might not have even known that you have. And they genuinely make you a happier person. This is why I think relationships and who you decide to be with for the rest of your life is such a huge decision. The divorce rate is 50%. Now, there's so many different factors of why that is, financial, and, that's one of the biggest reasons people get divorced. And then there's a lot of different factors. One thing that I know is a factor is also personalities, right? If someone is consistently negative and is consistently has a, pessimistic view of life, at some point in time, that water is just going to be thrown into the boat. And at some point in time, all that water is just going to sink the ship that both people are in, right? Because that feeling and that vibe of negativity seeps into everything else. So you want to make sure that from a relational standpoint, 1, you are being a person who is not that person. And number 2, you're making sure that when you are vetting people to date, or you're in a relationship, or even if you're in a relationship, everybody can go through cycles of being negative. Carly and I went through it last year. We didn't have the best year last year. We had so many things going on. We were, buying a house in Texas. Like, our careers were really taking off. We had things that we wanted to do individually, collectively, and it took a toll on our mental as well. And so we weren't the best showing up. And I say we, as in I wasn't the best showing up in the relationship. So I had to realize, hey, I'm pouring water on this boat. I'm the one sinking this ship, right? So what I had to do is I had to realize that and be like, hey, let me now be a part of the solution and start bucketing this water out of this ship. So that's something that you have to be very cautious and very aware of, because energy around you is going to make or break you. And it might not, and break is a is a dramatic word. It might not just like, break you, but what it can do is it's like death by 1,000 cuts, where it's like, hey, you might not really see the result of that for a year, 2 years, 3 years down the road. And then all of a sudden you're like, how did I get here? How did we get here? How did I become this person? And then you look around, you're like, oh, I've become who I don't like, who doesn't energize me. So be cautious of that. Still number 3, activities. Doing activities that you like to do. Responsibilities are great. That's amazing. Priorities are great. But what a priority should be is an activity or activities that you like to do. I love speaking. This is actually an activity for me. So for me, I'm like, oh, this is great. It's a priority. It's an activity. It's something that I love doing. I have to make time for it. Carly is amazing at sewing. If you've ever seen her stuff, go to Handmade by Carly on Instagram. It will blow your mind. She has to make time for that activity. It energizes her. Every time she comes down from her sewing room, she's so excited because she's like, babe, I made this. I created this. This is some cool concept that I have. This is a pattern that I'm making that I'm going to sell over here, blah, blah, blah. Also, it energizes her. It's an activity that makes her feel good about herself. Activities that boost your confidence make you a better person. You deserve to be confident. And confidence comes by doing activities and doing them in a way that you can see progression in. As humans and as people, we love to see progression. If we're not progressing, we feel stagnant. If we feel stagnant and we feel bored, that emanates to other areas of our life. And we're just like, why are we here? What are we doing? Right? So find activities that energize you as well. People that are the right people and activities that are the right activities for you. Now, your activity might be different for you, and that's fine. I might not like your activity. It's okay. You might not like mine, but find something for you. Number 4, assess your mental, emotional, spiritual, and relational needs. This is like all encompassing. From a spiritual standpoint, you might have a different faith, completely fine. But what are your spiritual needs that you need to make sure that you have to get your mind right so that you are in a right disposition, or you feel in right sitting with God, or whatever you believe in, right? From an emotional standpoint and a mental standpoint, what are things you have to do for your mental health? I knew for me last year and the year before, I was like, I need to go to therapy because I need to talk to someone about some things, right? And that was something where I saw myself spiraling. And you would never see it from the outside because that's when career was taking off. That's when, okay, we're buying a house. That's when all this other type of stuff. But mentally, every day, I was like, I'm going down a dark hole in the sense of this does not feel good. And I'm developing these mental patterns and mental habits, and I'm becoming so pessimistic. I'm becoming so stuck in the past. I'm becoming, someone who is more so, going through day to day, feeling a little bit more depressed than I would have wanted to. So I need to talk to someone and I need to get help in this, because if I do not, then I'm not going to be of service to myself and I'm not going to be of service to other people, right? So assessing what your mental needs are. And sometimes your mental needs might not be, hey, I need to go speak to a therapist. It might be, hey, for 5 minutes a day, I just need to go take a walk. I just need to have some alone time. I just need to play video games for 10 minutes. I just need to decompress for some time. It varies, but making sure that you have those needs met and that you do those things, it's going to be happier. You're going to be happier. There's a thing, the 5:30 fight. It's like after couples get home, there's an argument that can sometimes take place, but it has nothing to do with them together. It's like this, they both brought stress from work. They never had time to decompress, so on and so forth. So for me, before I leave my office, from a work day, I'll sit in what I call my prayer chair. It's a chair in the corner over there. And I'll just sit and I'll meditate or I'll read and I'll take 5-10 minutes just for myself, just to decompress before I leave my office. Because if I leave my office and there's stress still on me, then it's just going to very much flow through the house and I'm just not going to be a happy person. From a relational standpoint, relational needs are real, right? You have two people. If you're in a relationship, there are two people that are different people that have different viewpoints, that have different walks of life, that have done different things throughout their life, that have operated differently. So everybody has different needs and they have different wants. Being able to communicate those needs, communicate those wants, get on the same page with love languages, even if you have different love languages, but how you can serve the other's love languages, that's so important. That's huge, right? Like you have to have those conversations because it's going to make you happier. It's going to adjust expectations. It's going to make you feel closer and more intimate, because instead of just shying away from things, instead of not communicating, instead of, just pushing things off and going to bed, being a stranger with the other person in the same bed, you have a level of closeness. Now, I didn't say you're going to always agree all the time, but what you are going to be able to do is have a level of honesty and have a level of closeness because of that communication. So these things drastically uncomplicate your life. I don't know if drastically was the right word, magnificently uncomplicate your life. Who knows? But number one, identifying your responsibilities, listing out the things that you've got to do. If you see those straight on, you can be very efficient in those. You can get those out of the way relatively quickly on most days. Number two, identify your priorities. After your responsibilities, there are priorities. There's things that you want to do. Now, if none of your priorities happen, doesn't mean, everything just falls through, because your responsibilities, those things are met. Your priorities are things that you want to do. You start, hitting your priorities and giving yourself some grace and allowance for if you don't hit all of your priorities, you start to feel okay. Number three, figuring out what energizes you. If those people are negative, if you're the negative person, fix you first. But if your circle's negative and you're the person that's trying to lift up the ship and you're trying to get the water out of the boat and they're pouring water in the boat, get those people out the boat. And then activities, things that you like to do that make you feel good about yourself, that make you feel confident. Number four, assessing your mental, emotional, spiritual, and relational needs. These needs are all encompassing. How are you feeding your mind? How are your emotions getting taken care of? From a spiritual standpoint, what's your faith like with God or whatever you believe in? What's that looking like? And from a relational standpoint, if you're in a relationship with someone or you want to be in a relationship with someone, what are those needs that you know that you need to have met, and that communication that you need to make sure is infused? And what are you willing to give to someone else to make sure that their needs are met too? Because it's not always about you in a relationship. It should not always be about you. It's about that other person and you fully serving them. And when you do that, when all of these from responsibility to priority to what energizes you to mental, emotional, spiritual, relational, when all of that comes together, you actually uncomplicate your life. You become so much happier. And not every day will be happy, but when you do those things, you will be pushed in a direction to be happier on a day-to-day. Not every day is going to be happy, but it's going to be better. Our word of the day is simplify. The reason why it's simplify is because, yes, life is complex, but simple and individual tasks can be simplified. They can be done easier. And when you do those and you walk down your list of things that you have to do, your responsibilities, your priorities, and so on and so forth, you're able to just simplify your life. You're able to look at it from a bird's eye view. You're able to say, hey, what's important? What's not important? Let's focus on what's important. Let's focus on what's not important. Let's unclutter things so we can be happier, because a lot of things that we place so much emphasis on are really not the things that we need to focus on. And when you really identify and list those out, you start to see, I don't even need to worry about this. One, I can't control it. Two, if I can't control it, I don't even want to control it. Let me move that off to the side and let me focus on what really matters. So I hope that this podcast helps. I hope that you're able to uncomplicate your life. I hope that you're able to simplify your life. I am in a race to do that every single day. I want to optimize my life, but I also want to make sure the meaningful stuff is the thing that's the most important. If this podcast episode resonated with you, please like, comment, share, subscribe. I would love to get in contact with you. I would love to talk to you about it. I would love your input on things because, I just love talking. I'm a relational person. So I hope you like this podcast, and I will see you next time. Peace. Thank you all so much for watching the Chasing a Greater Vision podcast. If you like this podcast, please like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell, send it to friends, use a carrier pigeon, do whatever you have to do. We hope that this inspires you to chase your greater vision in your life and for us to continually and consistently do it together.